Hello, this is Tamara Caulder Richardson, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena. Please like, watch, and subscribe, and consider being a member. Welcome today. I have a very exciting guest, and she is all the way from the UK, and that would be Deborah Hatswell. She is a cryptid researcher.
Mhm.
She has her own investigations research company. It's called Being Believe Research and Investigations. And you probably have seen her. She's been interviewed by several people and been on Paranormal Called on Camera. And today she's here to talk to us about the reptilian humanoid man. So let me bring her on. Deborah, welcome back.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you for inviting me back on. Yeah, we have a strange subject today. And I say strange in the sense of not as in woo, but strange that the way it came to me. And me and you were speaking about how sometimes you
Yes.
get hints. So it all started for me. I've always been a cryptid researcher. So I've interviewed people about Bigfoot and Dogmen and UFOs and crafts and things like that. But I'd never really got very deep into alien and alien races. It wasn't something that I'd done a lot of research on. I met my husband. I've known him my entire life since we were children. And we met up again in 2003. And that's when we got together. And unfortunately, I had a really bad accident that year. And I lost the use of the right-hand side of my body. So we used to talk. And we'd just talk and talk and talk and talk. It was good therapy for me. And I'd never admitted to any partner before about what had happened to me at 15 when I was a young girl and I saw that thing in the park. But he asked me why I was so nervy at night and why I had so many night terrors and wouldn't go anywhere. I'm happy in the woods in the day then, but I wouldn't be in there at night. I couldn't do it. And he asked me that question that you don't want to be asked, which was why, why, what scared you? And I felt like I could tell him. So I told him what happened to me. And I seen a strange expression on his face. It wasn't doubt, it was recognition. And I said, have you seen it? And he said, no, not that. But I know what it's like to see something and not be believed. So at that time, I asked him and he wouldn't tell me. He's a very quiet man. He's very private. He keeps a lot of things to himself. So over the next 2 years, he can hear me interviewing guests, and a lot of people, I'll counsel them. So if they're worried and they don't want to go outside, I'll say to them, right, well, put me on FaceTime and I'll come out with you. And we might only do 5 steps, and then next time we'll do 6 steps until we build it up. It's one of the things that I do. So he hears me doing that, and I come in one day and I said to him, I've had I call him a message. I said, I've had a message. I've been interviewing somebody and I need to go to the barrow. We need to go to the ancient barrow. He said, I've never seen fear on my husband's face, ever. And he was white. He looked frightened to death. And I said to him, what's wrong? And he said, something happened to me on that barrow when I was in my 20s and I can't go back there. So I thought he meant like a physical attack, or something like that had happened to him. And I said, I don't understand. And he looked at me and I said, just tell me. And he said, I was with 3 friends. I was with 3 lads, and it was late at night. And back then where we lived, there was no shops or anything like that open. We lived quite far out. So you had to walk to the freeway, the motorway as we would call it. And where you'd get your petrol from would where you'd buy your milk and things like that. And that's all they were doing. They were walking, and they suddenly, all of them come black out. And the next thing, they're on top of the ancient barrow, which is an old burial ground. And they're head to head in a crucifix shape. And there's a light above them. So they're all looking upwards, but touching head to head. And my husband said the light it did almost angular movements that were far too fast for anything of our technology.
You mean like lasers? Like a laser show almost? Like you said, angles.
As like a fly, when you see a house fly and it moves almost at an angular thing. He said it was like that. It was moving in a way that a ship or a helicopter, you couldn't do it. And it shot off to Winter Hill. And Winter Hill is a huge, it's an installation, a radio transmitter. And it's one of the highest places in the northwest of England. And it's also rumoured to be an underground base.
Okay.
There are multiple abduction accounts from the area, multiple Men in Black accounts. There's a tiny little shepherd's house up there, and it actually has a UFO made of stained glass in the window because it's up there on the moor. So we've got stories from people. A chap who was a police officer who lived up on the moor, and he looked out the window one night and saw something so terrifying that he packed up his family and they moved into Liverpool, which is a really rough area. And he wouldn't tell anyone what he'd seen, but it frightened him that much that he actually sold his house. So you imagine you're living in the middle of a moor, there's horses, there's trickling streams, it's beautiful. And he walked away that morning and he never went back. He never went back to the hill. And I wondered if that was a flight path of some kind, because below us to the south is Jodrell Bank. And Jodrell Bank is a massive satellite installation that beams out messages to space and brings them back in. And I wonder if there was a correlation. I started looking for UFO reports along that route. I'd mentioned it in a live stream. I'd never interviewed a witness to a reptilian or anything like that. And I'd done a live stream interview, and they'd asked me what case I was working on at the time. And I said, well, I'm actually taking time out. I'm trying to solve my husband's case for him. And I explain it all to them. And I get an email the next day. And it's a lady, and she said to me, I'm not far from you. She's about 25 miles from where I live. And she worked for the government. And I'm not going to give a job away because it's very, very important. That was the only stipulation that she had. But let's just say that if you're a government worker in the UK, that can be anything from food stamps right the way through to working for the Parliament, for the actual government. Yeah. So she's in a government building. It's about 8:30 at night. In the UK, where I live, in the north, it can go dark at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We get a lot of fog. So it's typical. She said it's a typical autumn evening. She's in work. She's driving out of the car park. She looks left to see if there's any traffic coming down the A49. There isn't. And she looks right. And as she looks right, she sees what at first she presumed was a man, a very thick, muscular man. And he's walking down the middle of the road. And as she makes eye contact with him, she described him as, and I want to get her words precise, so I'm going to read it out as she said it to me. She said, it was, let me just get him. In short, Debbie, it was hideous. It was huge and arrogant and sneering. It was an upright reptilian. It was about 8 feet high or more, and it was honed to the peak of physical perfection. It was very thick, very sculpted and very lean. And she said, I could feel it feeding off me. I could feel sheer terror, and it was actually feeding from that. And what she's describing is like a telepathic connection between the two of them. She must have been incredibly strong because she was able to break that communication at that point. And as she looked up again, he'd gone. She was absolutely terrified, which is understandable. You've got a woman, I would imagine she's in her 50s, so similar age to me. She's in a dark car park. There's nobody else about. And she sees this thing walking down the lane at her.
No, I can't
She's got to process that while it's feeding from her. And she said to me, Debbie, why would it do that? And my initiative said, it can't feel those emotions itself. So it wants them from you.
Ooh, so the fear, you're saying the fear, he was feeding off of her fear, her fears.
He was. And I asked her if she felt that he was in any way, how do I put this politely? If it could have been sexual in any way. And she felt that there could have been an overtone to that. Now, for all I've never interviewed a reptilian witness, I have interviewed witnesses who've been abducted, and they exclaim the same thing to me, where something is suddenly in bed at the side of them, or they feel a hand within them kind of thing, and they feel that this is an entity of some kind. And I don't mean as in a demon, I mean from another dimension or another outer space or something like that. So I wanted to know if she'd picked up on that, and she had done. She'd felt that between them. So I needed to know then if this was the first experience she'd ever had with something like this. And she said, no, it wasn't. When she was in her 20s, They were at a gentleman's house and they were having a coffee and they were all chatting. And she said she'd met this gentleman before and he was a really nice man. And she said for a split second, he shapeshifted, Deb. He shapeshifted and he looked like a lizard. And he shapeshifted back. And she said, oh, I said, oh, you look like a lizard then. And he said, yeah, that happens a lot to me. And that were it. That was the end of it.
So he made a joke of it.
In a kind of, oh yeah, that happens quite a lot to me, as if he was.
What? So he's a shapeshifter. So are all these reptilian humanoid extraterrestrials, are they all shapeshifters?
I would ask if there are a number of humans walking around that are hosts that have a shapeshifter within them. And I'll explain that a little bit better.
Thank you.
Sometimes when people see phenomena, regardless of what it is, it can change. So I've got a report where a gentleman, he's camping and he sees a typical grey, like a typical grey alien, but that morphs into a Bigfoot shape because that was scarier to him. So the Bigfoot shape made him much more frightened than the grey. So it got more of what it needed. So how do I explain? Well, for me as a child, I would see things in my room. And the more frightened I would get, the more that would happen. And I now realize as an adult, it was feeding on my fear. So when I was able to,
your experiences that would get the most response from you.
Yes. So it was appearing in a way that would frighten me the most. So I think we've got a couple of things going on. I think we do have extraterrestrials that are reptilian and we see them like that. And I think they can shapeshift. I think they can appear, they can soften their appearance or harden it, depending on what they want from you. Because some of them want love. They don't have feelings. They're cold-blooded. And they want what humans have. So they long for it. Or they're very negative and they feed on the negative energy that a human will put out. We've all heard of androchrome. We know that the elite feed upon pheromones and adrenaline. What if this creature's doing the same thing? So for me, my biggest belief is that the elite actually are these hosts. That we all believe that they. I don't believe that they're human. I think they're actual hosts. So you've got this. I don't know. What would you call it? Like this outer that we see as a human.
Yes.
But they're not. So they don't care about human illness. They don't care about famine. They don't care about anything like that. That's not important to them. All that's important to them is what they want. So I start reaching out to remote viewers and people like that. And I worked with one lady and she said to me, "You've been down in the tunnels, haven't you, Deb?" And I said, "No, I haven't." "Well, I'm going to take you down into the tunnels." And I see what I would class as an army tunnel or a government grey metal tunnel. And as I get to the end of it, there's just pod after pod after pod of humans in water with something coming from the liver. I don't know how I knew it was the liver, but they had something attached to the liver. And I thought, they're being fed on. They're like human cows. They're just being fed for that, what they need, that drug. So as you can imagine, then I'm thinking, my husband had an hour and a half missing time. What if something like that happened to him? Because as I said to you earlier, when he woke up, he had a triangular mark on his arm. And it's still there to this day. Almost like a burn, like the skin didn't heal correctly. Whatever it was they did to him at that time. And he's ready he wants to be hypnotized. He wants to be taken back to see if he can find out any more about that day. My worry with that is that event was so traumatic for him, Tamara. I'm worried that if there were other events that he hasn't remembered.
That might be so. So question, now we've got from what I understand, that the Greys are pretty much so clones and follow along, and that we used to be them, or they used to be us, and they destroy the body, and they're doing this research. And then of course there's the taller, more version that's the leader. Do the reptilians, whether it be, I know there's different versions of reptilians. There's the various ones, Anunnaki, different ones.
Yeah.
That do they work with the Greys? I don't think they work with anyone unless they're other reptiles, from what I understand. Unless they are the elites.
I'm with you. I don't think they work with anybody. I think
they are top of the food chain.
They are top of the food chain and are quite prepared to use anything that they can overpower. And some of the things I say people don't understand, but I say not all of them are in control of what they're doing. Some of them are actually almost like a super soldier, where they're being put out by something that's far more input higher up than they are, and they're being sent out to cull or to. We hear about Dogmen creatures and Bigfoot creatures where they just millions of people are going missing. We're not having conversations about it. So what if they are being taken? And those pods that I've seen, that's where the missing go, and they're fed upon. A lot of people will say that David Icke has done he really has done the most amount of work on reptilians. I don't know 100th of what David knows. It's very new to me. It really is very new. But what I'm finding is more and more people are coming forward to me with their similar experiences. So we've got a lady at home. She's in bed. She said, I was not asleep. I definitely was not asleep. I was looking for the remote control because she's so frightened at night that she has to leave the television on because she's had all these incidents growing up. And she sees that typical alien grey, and that was enough to terrify her. So I felt that it didn't need to show itself as anything else because that worked. It frightened her and it got what it wanted from her. And then as you find that the people will get stronger and they will say, no, they'll set down some boundaries. This is not happening. You are not allowed to come at my bedside. And then it will morph into something far more frightening. So I think there's lots of types of them because we hear of crocodilian types. We hear of almost toad-like. The lady who saw the chap at work, who saw the reptilian, another experience that she had was also at work. Now, remember, we're in a government building. So these people work for the government and they're quite high up in the government.
Oh, yeah. And well, they're again, that's part of being top of the food chain. They have to be in control. I'm sure not all, but if they're aggressive nature, why wouldn't they be?
Well, exactly. So she said, we all work in little booths like you do all across the world. So, you know, your workstation next to workstation. And she has this work colleague called Anne. And she said, Debbie, she's very bird-like. She's tiny little woman and takes, you know, very small meals. And we're eating one day. I said, and I don't know how I did it. I looked to my right and I saw Anne, but she was this huge toad-like looking. She didn't say she was a toad. She couldn't put another word to it. It was amphibious. Got it. And it was forcing food down its mouth in a gluttonous way. Absolutely forcing it down. And she said, I looked back again and it was Anne. She just turned back into Anne. And I'm thinking, is it that the people that work in that building are not of this world? Or can this lady, this lady see them?
Both.
Yeah, she can see them. And I was going to say the same as you. I think it's both.
Both.
I think they are there because they're in that government job. But they're also humans that can see them. And that would frighten them. Because once you recognise them, you can fight them, can't you? You know, like with a demon, once you know its name, you can send it and it never can come back. But I think it's like that with these reptilians. Once you don't fear them, they have no hold over you.
Well, so they don't get real.
So they would, it would just make it worse and worse. So it would probably you'd see it more and more and more, and it would drain you. You know, people have spoken to me about being absolutely terrified at home. Young boys who are 14 being lifted out of the beds or having things thrown at them. One chap was, he only lives about 2 miles up the road from me. And he said it was a light outside the window. It wasn't a being of any kind, but that was enough to frighten him. So the fact that he's in his 30s now and can't open his curtains. And he said, it affects my relationships even to this day, Deborah, because how'd you explain to your girlfriend that you're in your 30s, but you're too frightened to look outside the window, even in the daytime? So for me, the really important work is working with them and trying to get them more confident.
And this probably is more common than you think. I'll tell you a couple things that happened to me. I haven't shared this with you. I was watching my husband. I generally don't like watching news because it's the same
Yeah.
old thing, and it's a kind of a lower vibration. So I usually have a music, something relaxing or what have you. But he wanted to put it on, so it was news, and it was the USA, and it was a congressman. It wasn't a senator, I don't believe. I can't recall who it was, where it was, but I'm looking at it, and then all of a sudden there was something just for a second that made angry this congressperson that was being interviewed, and his eyes turned completely into lizard eyes.
I'm so glad you said that.
And this happened twice now. Hold up. And so I took the camera. I said, holy crap, pause that. So I got multiple frames of this. Okay.
Mhm.
And these aren't like, there is nothing blurry. I mean, these are pure goat eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how mad you get, your eyes do not turn into goat eyes. Okay. They turn completely into it. And I went, oh my God. And I thought, what a freak thing. That kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, wow. That is, I mean, there were several photographs. It lasted. Then another time, this all happened within the last year. Okay. And then I would say maybe 6 months ago, they had an older gentleman, didn't look at this guy. The first one was younger with dark hair, Caucasian. This guy was Caucasian, older, somewhere in the Midwest. Don't remember his name. I was more interested in the phenomena. Yeah. And the interviewer, he pissed off the interviewer pissed him off. Like I remember them all because he had a person on that was not ethical. Okay. Right. And it was, I don't even remember the topic, but it was about something unethical in his whatever state that people didn't like, whatever. And he was siding with the big corporation. So right there is a good profile for Reptilian. And so he's put him on the spot. Aren't you doing this? And you're going to become one of the big wigs of one of these companies. I don't want to say which ones. I don't want any problems. And he said, yes. And he started going in and pissing him off. His eyes went black. I have photos of all this. Went black and went full lizard. And then he gained composure. It took him a while. And then they went back to like gray, blue eyes. And he just looked like a regular person. I was like, oh my God. And I have the evidence. Mm-hmm. Then I was watching the David Eck thing on Gaia TV, and the whole series he has on these reptilians, which I've heard about. I heard they can shapeshift. When I saw that blew me away because it's evidence. So I'm looking at this. I had seen it here and there, and I think I had a couple episodes left. Well, I fell asleep watching. It was like 2 before it was over, and I was like, oh my gosh, the sun's coming up. I usually don't do that. I usually go straight to bed like a normal person, but I don't know why I did that. But it's the sun's coming in, so I sat up. I'm awake. I'm looking for the remote control to turn it off. You know, like I'll look at this later. And I'm fixing the pillows. I'm at the end of the sofa, and out of my 70-some inch TV is a demonic sounding voice that says, and David Eck's picture frame froze, and it just got through saying how they're dominating the world and how the problem. It froze, and then a voice came on and called me by my little girl named Tammy and said, there is no God, there is no hope, all is lost, all is doomed. And I was so shocked because I couldn't couldn't comprehend it right off.
Yeah, you're trying to work it out. What's going on?
I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you be shocked out of your TV addressing you to your name? I was not asleep. I was wide awake. And that also surprised me. And then I went and I just, thank goodness, thought about it. I said, you are not welcome. Be gone in the name of Christ. And then I'm searching to turn it off. And then afterwards, I got angry. And I was like, how dare them do that? I'm a child of the Most High. Oh, how dare them. I got all these little black and white EMF detectors, blast them, put St. Benedict's on there, put holy water. I'm like, no, you're not doing this. And I'm like, I already know you're real. So that doesn't help. So you're not forget it. But that, I don't know how that's possible, but I guess because I was focusing on them and I'm like, I knew it, that sent out a signal, and they were like, oh, she knows about us. So they were trying to intimidate. I've heard of this happening, but never had it happen but it was real. It really happened.
If I see something at the side of my bed, but it's not reptilian in any way, shape or form, and it still terrifies me to this day. And it makes me angry as well. I get really angry at it because I'm constantly woken up all of the time. And you said something to me earlier, and it never twigged me. You said that was to keep me distracted. And I thought, she's absolutely right. If I'm working on a case, the night terrors are worse. And it's almost as if something's trying to stop me finding these answers. But I'm that type of woman where I think, oh, you keep visiting because I'm going to find out those answers. I was interviewing a chap, probably 2 years ago. And I said to my co-host, Debbie, Debbie, at any moment, I thought he was going to lick his eye with his tongue. It was the same thing as you. When he'd think, if he had to think about a question I'd asked him, his eyes almost, his pupils were lizard-like. They were like a cat would be. And I said to Debbie, he looked like he would just flick his tongue out and eat a fly. And she went, oh, don't like that. She went, tell me who it was. And I told her, and she went, I know exactly what you mean. I said, was it the same for you? And you spoke to him? She went, yes, it was. And I never put the interview out. You can see the shock in my face as he's almost morphing on camera. So like you, I've got the evidence, but people will say to me that, oh, it's CGI or you've manipulated it in some way. Or, if I sat one down now next to me, people would not believe it. But I often tell people that every single day, ordinary people in the world have experiences like this. And if we let those stories go, not only do they go into oblivion, we're losing information. And I had an account that came to me by serendipity. I was at home and a chap that I knew phoned me and he said, Debbie, I'm at a UFO conference in Blackpool and the speaker's not turned up. Because you live nearby, is there any chance you could just come and do a talk? So without thinking, I just went, yeah, not a problem, fine. It was 10 minutes on train. So I go up there and it's like a weekend thing. And the guy I was talking to is a filmmaker and he's interviewing this chap as we're speaking. And I'm sat next to him. So I'm listening to this guy. And he's telling this story about he's in the British Army and he's in Germany. And he said he's sharing a barracks. There's 3 men in his room. One had gone out the night before and not come back. He must have been on leave. He was with the girlfriend. The other one was out on exercises. And this guy's called Tony. He's in the bed. And he said, as I turn over, there's this reptilian stood at the end of the bed. Typical reptilian, but it's wearing clothes and it's got a belt around its waist. And below that belt, everything is transparent. And he said there were 12 cylinders on the belt. And I wondered if they were technology of some kind.
I bet.
Yeah, this belt seemed really important to them.
So wouldn't you think that like we're just theorizing here, but for example, I know some people could be a little freaked out hearing this, but the good news is there's also walking among us other extraterrestrial races such as Palladians and very positive ones that know about these bad guys that are on our side. So, where there's some good ones here as well. But as far as the technology, them shape-shifting and so forth, to me, I can usually tell who's Palladian or something of the sort because it's their heart. It's how they talk and it's their energy goes through their heart. Well, these reptilians, I would imagine, are heartless. And, I just give an example of the person that was on the take, right? And turn into a reptilian, which almost is like too perfect as an example. But wouldn't they almost come across like I could see where they could try to coexist with us, but then at the same time, they when put on the spot like this guy got mad, or they could also be what you would call like a narcissist or someone who's a psychopath because they have no emotions.
Yeah, exactly like that. That would be the analogy I would use. And some of them want to feel those emotions. And because they can enhance them, they can make them bigger. So if they want to feel negative energy, they'll do whatever they can to get a negative reaction from you. So even if that means haunting you night and day, then that's what they will do. But as you said, there are also, wherever you have negative, you have to have positive. There is always a balance. So there are lots and lots of beings out there that are fighting on our behalf without us even realizing it, you know. And we don't tend to hear those stories. We only hear the frightening ones, the ones that absolutely terrify us. But for anyone who's out there who is frightened, you can set very clear boundaries. So imagine it was a male that was coming onto you and you wanted nothing to do with him. You talk to him like he is muck on your shoe. You say, get out of my home. Don't ever come in my home again. You cannot scare me. I am protected. I am from the light, and you must leave. Yeah. And it sounds very simple, I know, but just try it. Just try it. And it does, eventually, it works. It really does work. And I think then we've overpowered one. That one's got to go and look for another victim now, hasn't it? Some of these people have had attachments from being children, and they're in the 70s, and this thing's fed off them this entire time. So you sit them down and you say, did anything ever happen with mum and dad? Or granny and well, it's funny you should say that. They seem to run in families.
Why? What is it they're looking for in these families? I'm talking about the Greys because it's probably a DNA thing. But with the reptilians, from what I understand, and, you know, I told you I'm an evidential medium at a channel. Aster of the Galactic Federation told me some things, and we kind of, you verified them, and I wanted to bring it to the audience's attention and get your feedback on this. But he said that they do this on every planet. They like to hide in darker places if for us in their original shape, you know, in caverns underground. They like to have harems of women for sex, and they sometimes will hide the way they look because it's hideous. And they also, he said, have a pheromone that comes off because they stink. So to hide that. And they will have babies, hybrids with women, but if they don't like them, sometimes they eat them. It's like a delicacy. And that I said, well, what is their purpose here on Earth? I said that they want to consume. He said the stuff that we have here and us. I'm like, this is horrible. He goes, don't worry about it. We know about them. We're on top of it. And so to me, they would fit into humans that are like them. And I did ask Jesus, I said, Jesus, what are these reptilians? Are they demons? And he made I thought it was a joke, but I got the point. He said, no, but just say they're cousins. So they have an agenda to basically, like you said, feed off the fear and to just consume things. You know,
it's gluttony in whatever form of gluttony they want it. So imagine being a being and never feeling love, or never feeling physical excitement, or never being, you know, being sexual with somebody. They want that, and they don't know how to go about doing it for themselves. So they're like bullies. So they'll look for a weakness. So with some men and women, it can be at times when they're really ill, or at times of loss. Or you know, that type, like when the typical male predator would cotton onto a woman who was really, really probably at a worse time in her life and on her knees, and you think that's the lady I want because I'm a predator and that's my prey. I think they're the same. I think they meet some people that are far too strong, like me and you, who will stand up to them. So they'll avoid me and you like the plague. They'll go and look for something weaker. But what they don't realise is, me and you would fight for that weaker person. So if I see somebody that's got that attachment on them, you hold my hand.
It's on.
That's me. That's how I am. I will walk every step of the way with you. Yeah, until we get you.
I'm the same way. I absolutely agree. So how does that? So let me ask you this, and again, we may not know, but just what are your thoughts on? So they're actually here. Some are here, and they can shapeshift, because I've seen it. I've taken pictures. But what about those humans that are at their same mindset? Could they put their consciousness in that body?
I don't see why not, because intent is everything, isn't it? We're all energy at base. And it would be, in my knowledge, that people actually make contracts with them. So almost like a deal with the devil, like a Fortean deal.
No kidding.
So, I want to be head of ICI. and I can bring you as many victims as you need, but I want this
So
in
great.
return. Yeah.
It's like a pimp. It's like a pimp.
Yeah, most definitely.
Pimping for reptiles.
There's talk in World War II of them trying to make a super soldier by actually impregnating females with reptilian blood, with reptilian sperm, to try and make this super soldier. What if they succeeded? So not all of them are extraterrestrial. What if some of them are Earth-made, which is even more frightening? Because if we've got that technology that we can hybridize anything we want, then all the things you hear about kill teams, you think, well, this is beyond. How do I fight this? How do I fight this? By making people aware of it. Because people will say to me, Debbie, does it not get you down? And I say, yeah, sometimes it does get me down. But my guide says to me, Debbie, you've got to keep shouting it. You've got to keep telling people, because we might be saving somebody, a future victim. Yeah. They might recognize instantly something that me and you have spoken about and gone, well, I know what to do in this situation now. So I could, and you could, sit in fear, or you think the fear's there, it's all part of it, I've got to deal with it, it's only like a wonky shoe. I've got to keep pushing forward. I've got to get this message out there. Imagine if the British press had been able to make David Icke go silent, because that's what they tried to do. We wouldn't know what we know about the reptilians now. We just wouldn't have that image. We wouldn't have the information. And there'd be thousands and thousands of more victims that are taken.
Well, he stumbled into it like you did. He stumbled, he kept meeting these people coincidentally, you know, how when life wants you to see something, here you go. And he kept meeting these people saying these experiences of these reptilians. And he said then the people he met did not know each other at all. And they were so similar, he started looking into it. And then this whole 25-year study came about that he has intense information on. And yes, that is a scary point to just kind of add on what you said. If we do have the technology to blend DNA technology with humans, so to use whatever reptilian Anunnaki or whatever it is to get that super soldier, that's pretty bad. But then again, I believe in the good guys.
Yes.
And there are people that are humans and people that probably aren't. I would call them more ultra-dimensional, the higher celestial, that maybe even have light bodies, might even be considered angelics, that are on top of this. And one thing, there are certain universal laws, and they can't, once you say no, it's like uninviting a vampire. No, you are not welcome. And I always say, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of the Most High. You have no authority here. I stand in the presence of God and Christ. And that does it. It just does it, because they're like, okay, she's pulling rank. She apparently knows her authority here. I'm going to go to someone who's not going to give me any problems. But
this one's not scared of me, but that can also attract them, Tamara, because everybody else is frightened of them. So you'll find, and you've probably gone through it yourself, where something's trying to frighten you and you've been able to make it smaller in your mind, and I'm not scared of you anymore. Then they get interested in you, because you're like, hang on a minute, everybody else runs away from me. This woman's not running. What's different about this woman?
Thanks.
You know, that's kind of how it happens. And then when we're talking technology, as I said to you, we're going to get together again, aren't we, and talk about my cases on military bases, because that's a whole subject in another. But on military bases, we see creatures that appear in the most terrifying of ways that can just fade out in front of your eyes like that.
Oh gosh, that is amazing. And I think we're at a time where this is very important, that we could have full disclosure. And a big favorite program of mine is Cosmic Disclosure, because I think that this is the brave people coming out and speaking like you are, and like I am, and others, and that we're going to see more of this. And I think that we need to react in a way that's empowering and not fear-based. And this is why it's important to be familiar with some of this information. Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.